Welcome back, survivalists. So being prepared for emergencies does you no good if you can't get access to your actual tools and equipment. This is where the concept of everyday carry comes in. These are the essential tools that'll probably help you out in 95% of the situations that you run into on a daily basis. So today I'm going to run through the 10 items that every man should carry on himself on a daily basis. Now feel free to switch out items within a category depending on what your scenario is for that day. For example, if you're out hiking and camping, maybe you want a different knife than if you're just going to your 9-to-5 job. But generally speaking, you want an item in each of these 10 different categories every day. So the first item on this list is going to be a good multi-tool. You would be very surprised by how many situations and how many problems arise that can be solved with a good multi-tool. I use this thing almost on a daily basis. I was in the Air Force for 11 years, and that's really where I established the habit of carrying around a multi-tool with me every single day, no matter where I went. And I would probably use my multi-tool or my Leatherman or my Gerber 2, 3, 4 times a day. This was my go-to tool when in the military. If you're not carrying a multi-tool around with you every single day right now, once you do, you're gonna be very surprised with how often you actually use it. And you start realizing, like, how did you ever live without a multi-tool? Everything from working on your car to working around your house to just these little emergencies that pop up here and there. Having a good multi-tool is just an essential item to carry around with you. And I'll be honest, most of the little tools and gadgets built into this thing, I don't actually use very often. There's really only two main things that I use this for. One is going to be the pliers, and the other one is going to be using it as a Phillips head or a flathead screwdriver. Just those three functionalities right there can solve 90% of the problems that arise throughout any given day. Now, there's a lot of different manufacturers out there, a lot of different designs for multi-tools out there, and really any of them will do just fine. I've always been a big fan of Gerber. That's kind of been the brand that I've been using for the past 15 years or so, and they've done me pretty well. So if you're not carrying around a multi-tool with you right now on a daily basis, you really need to. In my opinion, for a man, this is kind of an essential everyday carry item right there. So next on my list is going to be Paracord. And yes, I'm saying that I think that you should carry around Paracord with you on a daily basis. Now, I don't necessarily mean carrying around an entire hank of Paracord like this. It may not be a bad idea to keep this much Paracord in your backpack, in your vehicle, in your home, something like that. But when you are going around on your daily activities, it is very helpful to have some Paracord on you. There's a couple different ways that you can kind of incorporate Paracord into your everyday carry. One of them is just going to be a Paracord bracelet like this. This one here is made by Titan Cord. And Titan Cord, the inner strands of the Paracord have a lot of different functionalities in there, including fishing line, including a snare line, including a fire starter line as well. I'm a big fan of Titan Cord. I've been wearing this Titan Cord Paracord bracelet for a long time. You can also just get a Paracord lanyard. Attach this to your keychains, attach it to your pulls on your backpack, something like that. And then another option is that you can actually replace your shoelaces or bootlaces with Paracord. So if an emergency does arrive, you have access to the Paracord in your shoelaces. And Paracord is just one of those general purpose tools that you'd be kind of surprised how often you find a use for it. So obviously out in like a wilderness survival situation, having Paracord can be incredibly helpful for building shelters, building traps, for first aid, but just in your everyday life, just in an urban environment, having access to some Paracord can be very, very helpful. And so I do recommend that you have either a Paracord bracelet, you have a Paracord lanyard, or you replace your shoelaces with Paracord just so you have access to that tool in an emergency. So the next item that you should carry on yourself every day is going to be a good pen. And there's a couple of different directions that you can go with this. One, you can just go with any cheap pen that you can find for $1, $2. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. That's perfectly fine, but you should at least have some sort of pen on you. If you don't have an expensive or a very nice solid pen, have some sort of cheap, inexpensive pen that you carry on yourself every day. The other direction is that you can get a tactical pen. Now you see these quite often and they're fully metal, and really sometimes they have different tools and functionalities. For the most part, the biggest functionalities that they have is going to be a punch on the back, like a glass breaker. And this can be very helpful if you get stuck in a car upside down, or you come up to a scene where there's a car that's been flipped. having this glass breaker punch right here to break through that glass can be incredibly useful, and it's an incredibly nice tool to carry around with you on a daily basis. A lot of these pens have other different functionalities and gimmicks. I'm not really a huge fan of tactical pens all that much, but having one, at least with a glass breaker, is not a bad idea. Now, if you wanted to spend a little extra money and really invest in your everyday carry, you could get something like this. And this is the EP1 in stainless steel by Refine. This thing's bolt action and is specifically designed for everyday carry. You can see it's a much shorter size than a typical pen, just to make it a little bit more compact in your pockets. And this is going to be a much higher quality, much more durable tool for you to carry on yourself every single day. So I've been carrying around this pen for a couple years now. I'm a big fan of it, and I'll have a link down in the description below where you can get a pen like this. This is from refine.com. Now, pens may not necessarily save your life in an emergency unless you have that tactical pen with the punch in it, but I think that culturally men should be prepared, right? And that includes having a pen and a writing tool on them. Also, if you ever are lost in the woods, having a pen and a pad of paper, something to kind of write your thoughts down, can really be very helpful psychologically. So the next item is going to be a good belt. Now, a lot of people don't put much thought into their belt, but you really should, considering that most of your everyday carry items are going to somehow attach to your belt. And there's really two different directions that you can go with a belt for your EDC. One is that you can get a solid leather belt. This is just one long solid piece of leather, and a good belt like this could literally last you 40, 50 years. It's just one solid piece of leather. A lot of the cheaper belts, they have very thin leather, and then they have like a sheet of cardboard and then other thin leather, and they kind of sew it all together, and then you have to worry about the threads coming apart or getting wet and the cardboard expanding. That's why, for the most part, I'm a big fan of just a solid piece of leather for my belts. Now, there are some downfalls to belts like that, and that's that they typically only have a handful of hole punches in them. They're kind of spaced out pretty far as well, so it's a little bit harder to get an exact fit for your gear. And that's where having a belt specifically designed for everyday carry items comes in hand. So if you don't want to go with a solid leather belt, the other direction is that you can go with something like this. And this is by Core, and this is their EDC belt. So they actually designed a belt specifically for EDC items. So how is this belt specifically designed for EDC? Well, instead of having a typical button and holes in your belt, this one actually has a ratcheting system. You can hear it ratcheting there. And these ratchet systems are much more finer increments than a typical belt hole is. So with this type of belt system, you can tighten your belt up into 1/4 inch increments. It's gonna allow you to get a much, much tighter and more precise fit. And this is a big deal, especially when you have a lot of accessories on your belt or you have a concealed carry holster. With a typical leather belt like this, you have 6 sizes to choose from, and if your holster and your other accessories make your belt have to go a lot wider, you may run out of room. But with a ratcheting system like this, you have a much wider area that you can adjust your belt and you get into much finer increments. So I am a big fan of Core's EDC belts. They're all very high quality, and I have a link to their company down in the description below if you want to check them out for yourself. Now, next on the list is going to be a simple lighter. Now, you can go with something fancy like an expensive Zippo, or you can just go get a 99-cent Bic lighter. These little Bic lighters are actually pretty reliable in my opinion, and typically what I carry around on myself. So if you're out in the woods hiking or camping and you get lost, having a good lighter could literally be the difference between life and death. But more commonly in your everyday life, having a lighter is just a useful tool. You can use it to light candles so the power goes out. You can use it to cut fishing line or even melt the ends of paracord. These are just super inexpensive and just something that I like to carry around. So next on the list is going to be a good knife. And I've got a huge knife collection. I have tons and tons of knives, and I kind of interchange them every few days. Now, there are a couple brands that I really like. One of them is Spyderco. I'm a big fan of Spyderco. They've got a really unique design that's very practical, but there are a bunch of different designs out there for pocket knives. CRKT is another solid brand. I've had this particular knife for probably 15 years now. I got this when I was first in the Air Force, and it is still an incredibly reliable knife and one of my favorite ones. Outdoor Edge also has some really interesting knives, and this is their Razor Light EDC, and it's actually a replaceable razor blade here for the knife. And I do use this quite often. This is kind of my go-to knife for opening boxes and opening packages, just because it is so sharp. And when the blade dulls, I can literally take that blade out and replace it with a new one. So this one here is by Outdoor Edge. So a pocket knife's a good example of an item that you can change out depending on your specific situation. You just want to have something in that knife category. For example, if you're going out hiking and camping, you may want something a little bit larger and something that is full tang. You also may want something that has a good sheath attached to your belt as well. So if I'm ever camping, I usually bring a much larger knife than my typical go-to knife in just kind of the urban environment. Now, there's obviously a lot of great full tang knives out there, but one of my favorite ones and one of my go-to ones for a long time has been the Gerber LMF II. And there's a couple of different variations and designs of this, a couple of different sheets of it as well. But this is what they issue in the military to service members. And you can see I've beaten the hell out of this knife, but this is still one of my favorite knives. Incredibly comfortable rubber grip, very solid. It's got some weight to it as well. It's got a punch here on the back for breaking glass. This is definitely one of my favorite outdoor knives right here, and this is by Gerber. So I'll have a link down in the description below to a few of my favorite knives, as well as links to my recommendations for items in all 10 of these categories. So next on the list is going to be a water bottle, and this is absolutely one of my everyday carry items. It is very rare for you to ever find me anywhere without a water bottle with me. So again, there's a couple of different designs and directions you can go with this depending on what you're doing. This is my typical type of water bottle that I use if I'm just kind of driving around town or I'm going to the gym. Typically what you see if I'm going hiking or something, I may bring something like this as well. I am also just a huge fan of my YETI. This is what I drink out of every single day. And typically I'll fill this up with water 2-3 times a day, and I'm just sipping on my YETI thermos all day long. And Yetis really are very impressive with how cool they can actually keep your water all throughout the day. Now, if I'm going hiking or camping, I do tend to mix things up a bit. I usually go with something like this, with just a single wall water bottle that I can attach some sort of carabiner to the top of it. You really want to get a single wall, not a typical thermos that has multiple layers, so that you can boil water with something like this in an emergency. And you also want to make sure there's no plastic or rubber on your water bottle as well, in case you do need to boil water in there. And I do like to get ones that have a loop here at the top, so I can tie a cordage through that or attach a carabiner and keep this on my belt or on my backpack if I needed to. So water bottles are definitely not something that people instinctively think about with everyday carry, but it is very rare to see me without a water bottle. And hydration is very important in your life. And I say that it is worth it to actually invest a little bit of money in a good water bottle. So next on the list is going to be a good flashlight. And yes, your phone probably has a flashlight on it, but in that situation, you're sacrificing your phone's battery just to have light. It is far more recommended to have a dedicated flashlight. These usually have a much brighter and much wider range light than your flashlight on your phone anyway. And you can literally go with something cheap like this, or you can buy something a little bit more expensive with some rubber grips on it and use this as your flashlight. But whatever you do, I do recommend that you keep the battery types in mind as well. You don't necessarily want to get a super powerful flashlight, but it uses some sort of weird rare battery. I typically like to get something that uses AAA or AA battery, so in an emergency, it's much easier for me to find replaceable batteries for my flashlight. And again, if you're camping or hiking, you may want to have different flashlights that you bring than if you're just going to your office every day. So it may be beneficial to buy multiple flashlights for multiple situations. So next up is going to be a portable battery charger. And this is kind of a newer addition to my own personal EDC. I've only really been carrying these around the last couple of years, but I love having a portable battery charger, something that I can charge my phone with if I'm traveling or hiking or just forget to charge it in the morning before. And you can buy something as cheap as this for about $10, $15 that could probably charge your phone 2 or 3 times. You can literally see them at the grocery store. And I do recommend that you have a simple, cheap battery charger like this that you carry around with you. Or if you're going out camping or hiking, you can get something like this. This is a much bigger power bank. It's fully waterproof and dustproof and dirtproof, has multiple USB ports on there, and it has a solar charger on the back. This also comes with LED flashlights built into it as well. There's a bunch of different companies making these battery banks like this, and I am very surprised by how affordable they are. You can get something like this for $30, $40, $50. I'll have a link in the description to this exact one that I've been using. I'm pretty happy with it. I typically bring this anytime I go camping nowadays, and I just attach this to my backpack so it's actually charging from the sunlight just while I'm hiking, kind of walking around. But for being a creator like myself who has a lot of camera equipment, is constantly on his phone, having something like this that can charge my phone while I'm out hiking and camping is absolutely imperative. And having some sort of battery charger like this, or even a tiny one, is definitely a go-to item nowadays in my everyday carry. So next up is going to be a carabiner. Now I use carabiners a lot. It's just a habit that I developed in the military, but I typically have a carabiner attached to my keys just so I can quickly attach these to a belt loop or attach them to my backpack, something like that. But I find tons and tons of uses for carabiners. So not just for my keys, what I often use them for is my work gloves as well. So when I'm not using my work gloves, I kind of attach these to a belt loop so they're right there on my hips whenever I need them. A carabiner is also how I attach the solar charger battery pack to my backpack while I'm out hiking. You can also attach tons of other stuff, including your water bottle as well, with a carabiner. So generally speaking, I like having a carabiner on my car keys just so I always have one on me, and it's always right there if I can find any other uses for a good solid carabiner. Now you can buy cheap carabiners for like $2, but they're really not gonna do you much good in an emergency situation. I recommend actually spending $10, $15 on just a good solid carabiner. This one here can hold up to 100 pounds, but I have other camping or hiking carabiners that can hold up to 1,000 pounds. So don't be hesitant to invest a little bit of money in a good carabiner that could literally last you the rest of your life. So if you want to learn what the 10 items are that every man should carry in his car at all times, click right here to check out my video breaking those down for you. And don't forget to subscribe for more prepping and survival videos. Thanks so much for watching, be safe, and I'll see you over in the next video.